Okay, can you hear me?
Give a thumbs up.
Okay, sorry about that. I will start again. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate your coming to listen to our conversation, our webinar about convincing schools on raising awareness about fake pills. I'm assuming that most of you here have been affected by the opioid crisis in some way. And like me, I'm assuming that you are interested in affecting change and making people aware of the dangers that are out there today. And I appreciate your help, because this is not something that one person can do. This is something that we all need to work together to do. We do have a large number of attendees expected today, and so I ask if you could remain on mute during the presentation. The presentation itself should take about 40 or 45 minutes, I think. And if you have any questions, you can put them in your chat, go into the chat feature. My husband, John, is sitting next to me. He's gonna kind of compile the questions, and at the end, there'll be time for Q&A. So if you can hold on to your questions, that would be ideal. And there's just going to be too many people on the call, on the webinar, to be able to have a real meaningful conversation during the presentation. So I apologize for that. Also, just want to let you know that I'm assuming that if you're here for this presentation, you're pretty well aware of the fentanyl problem, of the opioid crisis, what's going on. And so I'm not really going to talk too much about the history or what's going to go on. I'll talk about it a tad, but I'm really not going to go into a lot of numbers or a lot of the why this is happening. If you do need that information, Song for Charlie is a good resource, or you can just really Google opioids or fentanyl in your city, or CDC data. There's a lot of different research that's out there, or a lot of different data that's out there. If you need help finding data, you could always reach out to me and I can do what I can. We are recording this. If you need to drop off, or if you know anybody who couldn't make it, who'd like to watch it, we will post this on the Song for Charlie webpage. So it'll be available for future reference. And I will be posting the presentation itself. So if you're interested in sharing any of these slides with anybody, as you're presenting to schools or to any other forum, feel free to pull from this presentation. That is it for now. Yep. So I'm going to start now by introducing Ed Ternan. He started Song for Charlie with his wife, Mary, and he wanted to take a moment to talk to you all. So I'm going to turn it over to Ed for a moment.
I'm going to unmute Ed.
Okay, Ed, are you there? I think you're unmuted.
I think I'm live. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Good. I don't want to take any more time than necessary from Jen and John Epstein's presentation, but I did want to jump on real quick and just say a couple thank yous. When we started Song for Charlie, we thought we want to try and reach kids and educate them and warn them about these fake pills. And we said to ourselves, well, where are the kids? There are two places, really. They're on social media and they're in schools. And we started thinking about, well, how do we reach the schools? And I remember talking to Jen and John early on and saying, boy, we're just like on first base with that part. I don't understand how school districts work. I don't know that part. We got a lot of research and work to do. And what happened was Jen and John Epstein did their community town hall, and their local district jumped on board with a high level of support, and very quickly took the information that they learned and they created this curricula for middle school and high school students. And it took us from first base to third base like overnight. And since then, Jen and John have taken this on as a project to try and spread the word. So I'm just thrilled with the progress we've made so quickly. And we owe a big debt of gratitude to the Beaverton School District. These people set up, created this curricula, number one, and then just offered to share it just no strings attached as widely as we could. So that really fast-tracked things. Of course, Jen and John Epstein have been working tirelessly to put this all together. But most of all, I want to thank all of you who are attending here today. Those of us who have been affected by this, a lot of times we shake our heads and we just say, well, why isn't anybody doing anything? And we're all here today because we've all decided, well, if nobody else is going to do it, I'm going to do it. Like, we're going to take this on ourselves and we're going to address this problem ourselves. That's what you're doing today. You all are now stepping up and saying, I'm going to be part of the solution to this very serious problem. And I'm inspired by that. That's really inspiring. So we thank you in advance. It's going to be a process, and Jen will go through these slides and talk to you about how the process works in trying to push this stuff through schools. But we couldn't do it without you, and we really appreciate your support, and we're glad you're here. Okay, thanks everybody.
Great, thank you, Ed. So let me start off by introducing myself. My name is Jennifer Epstein. I live in Portland, Oregon with my husband, John, and my son, Miles. We had a second son, Cal, who passed away in December of 2020 from fentanyl poisoning, and I'll talk a little bit about him in a moment. I am not a expert on fentanyl, other than what I've learned in the past 6+ months. I am not a mental health care professional. I am not a professional when it comes to legislation or any of the other issues around the opioid crisis. What I feel like I bring and where my skills are is I have a business background. I worked in high tech. When my kids were young, I was very involved in the schools. My husband is a former teacher, so he's familiar with schools. I managed a music school and did some business analytics type stuff as a business analyst in an apparel company. And so my skills are more in project management and a little bit of school understanding of schools, just from my husband being in schools and from my working with schools as volunteers. And so I decided to jump in and try to drive this because, like Ed mentioned, Beaverton School District, our school district, was very responsive when we came to them and set up a great program. And I felt it was important to share it with as many people as possible. And when I looked on Facebook, when I talked to other families who had lost loved ones to this crisis, I heard again and again that people were frustrated that schools weren't doing anything. And so I felt like I could contribute in that way. And so that's why I'm here. As I go through this presentation, if you have any feedback, anything that you feel like I need more data on, or I didn't get accurately, please share with me. I want to get better at this, and I want to make sure that everything is accurate as possible, but also just recognize like I said, I am not an expert in terms of addiction or border walls and all those other issues that contribute to this. My focus is really getting this information to the schools. Okay, my son Cal, I think he was a pretty typical teenage boy. He was a great kid. He was 18 years old. He was a very active kid in high school in terms of, did intramural sports. He was involved in theater. He did kind of the backstage stuff at school. He, in all the high school plays, he had a job. He was a lifeguard and a swim instructor. During COVID, he went out and got a job at the grocery stores because he could no longer work at the pools. He was a kid who was able to successfully balance work, school, friends. Friendships were important to him, like a lot of teenagers. Just all around a great kid, somebody who people looked out for others and who people enjoyed being with. He graduated from high school at our local high school, Sunset High School, in June of 2020. We knew he had some issues around anxiety. During his senior year, we had learned that he was having a hard time eating because of anxiety, and he was managing that with pot, and that was something we were concerned about. So he was in counseling and seeing a psychiatrist. So we knew there were issues, but we thought he was in a good path. He went to school at University of Hawaii during the pandemic. Wasn't such a bad place for him to go. He was happy to be going. And from what we understand, he had a successful fall year, fall first semester at school. He going to Hawaii on his own because of the pandemic and having to remain in his dorm, not have a roommate, that type of thing. There were some challenges with that, but he was known to be a kid on campus who easily made friends, said hi to everybody, took care of the people in his dorm. He was well liked at school. He came home at Christmas time. We were looking forward to having him home at Christmas time, and within a few days of him coming home, we found him unresponsive, and later learned that he had purchased an OxyContin through Snapchat and taken that, and that's what took his life. So John and I, we, like I said, we don't have a background in the area of addiction or drug abuse or anything like that. We were one of those families that was blindsided by our son's death, and really like a lot of families, our lives were turned upside down. We were fortunate in that Ed and Mary Turnan came to us and just reached out to us and were open to us, and within a week or two following Cal's death, we sat down with them and they kind of explained what was happening. They explained to us about how fentanyl had changed the landscape of the drug world, and how much dangerous it is, and how kids are getting drugs on social media, and how dangerous it is. And so this was all new to us, and it took us, of course, we're still coming to terms of what happened, but it took us some time to figure out what happened. In about March or so, we took our story to our local school district, Beaverton School District, because we were very concerned that people in our community didn't know what was going on. And we asked Beaverton School District if we could share Cal's story. And they, unfortunately, Beaverton School District has had several deaths of students in our community. And so they were aware of the problem, and they were trying to figure out what to do with it. And so when we stepped forward, they took it and ran with it. They were more than willing to take our story and make an awareness campaign with it. And so we worked closely with Beaverton School Districts to come up with an awareness campaign that incorporated several kind of strategies. The first thing is that they had a 90-minute community conversation where John and I shared the story of Cal and basically shared what happened to our family. And they brought in some law enforcement, and law enforcement shared some local numbers of how fentanyl was affecting our community. We had the local health department come and talk about addiction and also just mental health in teens. And then we had some people from our school district also in attendance. So we had a 90-minute community conversation that was open to anyone in our community. It was widely advertised in the school districts. People attended from our school district as well as neighboring school districts. In that 90-minute presentation, in the live version, over 6,500 people attended the online webinar. Since then, it has been viewed more than 22,000 times. So we're happy that that information is getting out. But of course, that is a small drop in the bucket when you think of all the kids in our community or across the US, et cetera. There's still a lot of education to go. The second part of their their social media, or the second part of their awareness campaign was a social media campaign. And so they basically educated people and had various posting and advertising on Facebook, on Instagram, on basically all the social media platforms, Twitter, that Beaverton School District is a part of. They had students putting it on the student social media sites as well. And then there were also in newsletters and any other communication that went out to students and to their families. So there was a big social media campaign. And then lastly, Beaverton School District developed curriculum around the whole idea of fake pills and the dangers of fake pills. And the feedback that we initially got whenever we came to Beaverton School District was that there was nothing available regarding fake pills. They went to Scholastic and the other sources where they typically get their curriculum material, and there was nothing. And so Ed Turnan actually stepped up, and myself sat down with the curriculum people at the district and basically funneled as much information as we could to get them information on what was happening and why this is happening now, and how this ties in with social media and fentanyl and how it all ties together. And so they were able to develop a really thorough curriculum. There's a middle school curriculum, and then there's a high school curriculum. And by the end of the school year, they were able to get this curriculum or this education to all students in middle school and high school. And within Beaverton School District, that means that there were more than 22,000 students in our school district that had some sort of education about fake pills. That was, we thought that was a big win. Some students, because of One Health education, like if some of the graduating seniors or actually upperclassmen may not have had a health class, it might have been an abbreviated, shorter education over 1 or 2 class periods. The students that were in health that semester got the full education, but we know that over 22,000 students were exposed to it. So Beaverton School District hit it out of the ballpark. They did everything they could have, we felt, and we were happy that we were able to affect that change. Around the same time as Beaverton was coming up with their material, I was hearing from people that they were frustrated with their school districts, and they were frustrated that that other people weren't stepping up, or other organizations weren't stepping up to raise awareness. And that is when we developed, that is why we decided to reach out with this and develop a process that I'm going to go into of how to reach out to schools. So I want to spend a minute before we go into the process, just talk a little bit about what is happening. And I'm sure most of you are aware of this, but I just want to talk at a high level. So the US opioid epidemic has been around for a while. It started in the late 90s, whenever doctors were overprescribing, and we had some drug traffickers were basically stealing opioids, legitimately manufactured opioids, and selling them on the black market. So the opioid epidemic has been around for a while and a problem. Initially, it hit the Rust Belt and the Deep South the hardest. And so it was easy for a lot of people to turn a blind eye to it if it wasn't affecting their region. And it was, unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of sympathy, because I think that people kind of put up a it's not going to happen to me, or it doesn't affect me type of attitude. And so it hasn't gotten the attention that it has deserved. Over the last, I would say 5 years, maybe 5 to 10 years, there's a lot of other factors that have played in that have really made things a lot riskier. Of course, there's always been, not always, but for a long time, there's been drug cartels. And but in the last 5 or 10 years, we've had an increase in illicit fentanyl manufacturers. So people in China that are manufacturing illicit fentanyl and sending it to the US. We've got kids who are now have basically a computer in their pocket. Every kid, pretty much every kid in the US has a computer or a phone in their pocket, which gives them social media access. And that is where the drug dealers know they can go to get to the kids. Today's kids also have grown up where in a society where drug is more normalized than it was when we were growing up. Kids are used to getting Xanax or Adderall, or they have friends who have gotten these prescriptions if they're dealing with ADD or anxiety. Whenever they have their wisdom teeth taken out, they get Percocet. Today's kids are just exposed more to pills, and the idea of taking a pill doesn't seem as scary to them as it was perhaps to us when we were growing up. Of course, we have the relaxing drug laws. We have the issues with the border crossings. We have the adult stress. The COVID pandemic caused stress for students, for kids. There's a lot of stuff that's going on that created this perfect storm that basically resulted in our kids getting access to fentanyl, to drugs, and a lot of them dying, or many of them starting to die. So when you look at what is happening, I want to point out here that there are many fronts to this problem. This is a problem that has been brewing for many years, and warning the kids is not going to solve everything. I think it's important to know that the people who are focusing on legislation, the people who are focusing on putting pressure on the social media giants, the people who are at the border walls trying to raise attention to what's happening at the border, everybody who's touching all the aspects of this, it's all important, and all of these issues play a part in what's happening. And so I think that the education of the kids is important, but I don't think it's any more or less important than anything else. Whenever we assess this situation, we basically decided that there was no way that my husband and I could focus on everything. And so just with our backgrounds and what we're comfortable with, we have decided to focus on the part of the solution where we want to warn the kids. We think that educating the kids, as Ed mentioned, educating the kids where they are, whether it be on social media and schools, is important, and educating them in their language. I think we need to be upfront with them, educate them on what's going on, educate them in terms that they're going to understand, and the lingo that they're going to listen. And so, I think that Ed is driving a lot of research. He's trying to get some research into, what kind of messages do kids listen to? How are they going to listen to this? They're not going to listen to news stories. They're not going to listen to the Facebook posts that their mom and dad listen to. So we need to figure out how to get the message to them where they are and in their language. Let me just make sure I'm not forgetting anything here. Okay. Before I go into the details of how to talk to schools, I do want to do a reality check here. As you just saw, the fentanyl and opioid problem is very complex, and it took 20 years to create the problem to get to where we are, 20 plus years. It's not going to be fixed overnight. It's going to take years to fix it. So I don't have a silver bullet for you, unfortunately. Convincing the schools will be hard. And so whenever you go start this, I think you need to be realistic and think of this as a long-term project, not a quick fix. My school district, I recognize, was responsive, and that was unusual. And I think that hopefully school districts, we can convince school districts to implement education programs of some sort before they have students who die in their district. I don't necessarily think that's a realistic goal, but we just need to recognize that it's going to take time. Also, we will learn and adjust as we go. I'm going to show you a structure and give you some tools on how to approach your school district. And if you find ways that work well for you, or if you're finding something's not working, I would love to hear, because I think that we can all learn from each other, and we can adjust and steal ideas from each other and make this better. And I think as we go and as we all move forward together, what I think we're going to see is that we're going to get some momentum. And once we get some momentum, the schools are going to be more likely to say yes. I think that Beaverton School District is a start. I've been working with the state of Oregon Department of Education to try to get to the schools in the state of Oregon, and they're being responsive. It's going to take time, but as we have some successes and we share, and then I think when you go to your school, you can say, hey, we're in California, Oregon's doing this, why can't we do this? Or why can't the state of Washington do this? Or if you're in Dallas, and in Dallas they implement programs, and you're in Houston, hey, the folks in Dallas are doing this, why can't we do it? Like the more successes we have, the more we can share. And when people start seeing that there are school districts that are taking this seriously, they're going to start paying attention too. Okay, so I think a lot of people, anybody who has kids have had exposure to schools, and we all see that the schools are doing a lot of programs, and so we often wonder, why is it so hard to get a school to implement a new program? Excuse me. So I want to take a minute to think about or to talk through a little bit about why schools might be resistant to change. And I think if you understand some of these facts or some of these points, it may help you in your approach. So first of all, schools are teaching to state mandated standards. And so at a national level, there's certain standards that are mandated, and then that trickles down to the state level. The state mandates it, and then the school district has to decide how they're going to develop curriculum to meet those state standards. So the school has a lot of flexibility on exactly what they want to teach, but they also they're required to meet the state standards. So when they look at all the state standards and all the things that they're required to teach, there's room for some extra stuff, but there's the schools are busy and packed as it is, and so there's not necessarily a lot of room for a lot of extra stuff. So you have to keep in mind that they're teaching to what they're being mandated to teach. Schools also have many people coming to them and asking them to implement new programs. It could be something like as simple as handwriting. There's a lot of people who are pushing for handwriting or long division taught a certain way, or something more complex or more recent as critical race theory, or there's people who have opinions on how the schools should manage COVID. So the schools are constantly hearing from their constituents, from the people who attend the schools, or even perhaps not even who have students in schools, but just various organizations contacting them, telling them that they want to have certain programs in schools. So they receive a lot of input, and just due to the nature of the numbers of people contacting them, they just don't have the ability to say yes all the time. So it's not surprising that the first time you go to them, they say no. Hopefully they're not going to give you a flat out no, but they're going to assess it. but it's not likely that you're going to get a quick yes unless they've already been thinking about it. As I'm sure most of you already know, whenever you talk about the opioid problem or the fentanyl problem or fake pill problem, there's a lot of people in our day-to-day lives who really don't understand what's going on. And the fentanyl problem, opioids, when you look at the percentage of the population that has been affected, while it's growing, and it may seem like we know a lot of people who are affected, it is really a minority of the population who is directly affected by this. And so it is understandable that the decision makers may not understand what is going on. And so you have to see yourself as a person who needs to educate them and make them realize what is going on, and make them understand that the introduction of fentanyl into the drug and the drug supply line has made things much, much more dangerous and has had a bigger impact. And so I think it's important to understand that, and that you need to see yourself as an educator. The curriculum is typically updated on a set schedule. And so the health curriculum or the math curriculum or whatever curriculum might only be updated once every 5 years or so. And so if a school district recently updated their health or drug curriculum, they may think that this is covered, especially if they don't understand the problem. And so likely you are going to them to ask for a change outside of their normal cycle. Unfortunately, the drug issues are changing much faster than the curriculum is probably being updated. And so as a result, you have to recognize that you might be coming in and asking for something that's out of their cycle. They may not be planning to do this. They may not have the resources really readily available to do this. And then, of course, there's the stigma. I think we've all probably been faced with the stigma of drug deaths or drug use. And unfortunately, it's a stigma that is something I think it's across America and in the schools as well. So that is always a challenge. And schools may not want there to be a perception that there's a drug problem in their schools, or they're perhaps concerned that parents might push back. I don't necessarily think this is a good thing. In fact, I don't think it's good at all, but I think this is reality. And so we have to, the best way to overcome stigma is to talk and educate people. And I think we need to be prepared to do that. Okay. This page, basically, I'd like to talk a little bit about kind of the change in the drug environment and what the introduction of fentanyl means. And basically, the introduction of fentanyl has created a new danger that I think is kind of falling through the cracks with some schools. Schools have different approaches to drug education. Some schools may have the approach of abstinence. They teach kids don't do pills and don't do drugs, and that's it. Some schools might have a more of a harm reduction approach and talk more about the risks of doing drugs and have a more harm reduction approach. So I think that whichever approach a school has, neither approach is really addressing the issue of fake pills. If a school is teaching prescription pills, on the left here, they're teaching kids not to use prescription pills, they may be teaching them about the dangers if you take too many prescription pills, or the effects that prescription pills might have on your body, etc. If they're teaching them about illicit drugs, they may be talking about, marijuana, heroin, the risks of methamphetamine, whatever. But really, the introduction of fake pills with fentanyl is kind of this middle no man's land here. A young person who's not educated in this issue might think they're taking a prescription pill that is that would be safe if they took one or two. If they were taking one Xanax or one Adderall, a person's not going to die from it, and they know that, not knowing that they're actually getting something much stronger, the fentanyl that's could be deadly. And so I think that what we need to get through to this to a school district that is, even if the school district has a very thorough drug ed program, and even if they have harm reduction approach, and they have support for people fighting addiction, etc., there's a good chance that the new danger of fake pills is not being covered in the existing education. So so I think this is something that as I've approached the school district and approached our the Oregon Department of Education, this idea is new to them. And so I think this is something that we need to share with other people. Okay, so we are just about halfway through the presentation, so thank you for holding on. And we are now into the Pear Approach. So as I said, as I was working with Beaverton School District, and we were coming up with the approach, the education programs through Beaverton School District, I was also hearing that other people were having problems convincing their school district. And so I worked with my husband and with some input from our school district as well as some other school districts, and basically came up with an approach of and some suggestions. And so as I said, I don't necessarily think that this is a silver bullet. I don't necessarily think that this will get everybody 100% of what they want, but I think this will increase your chances of getting what you need, or getting some sort of response from your school district. The Pear Approach, part of the reason why we came up with the name the Pear Approach is that we want to remind people that this is really a partnership. If a school district is feeling like they're attacked, if a school district is feeling like this is something that's being pushed on them, they're more likely to resist. If they feel like that you are approaching them, asking for something, that you're going to be an ally with them, that you are going to work with them, they're more likely to listen. And so as you're doing this, try to think of them as a partner. Try to think of them as somebody who can help you to educate people and help you to reach the students. You both have the shared goal of educating and protecting the students in the district. So basically the 4 steps of the Pear Approach are to plan. This is where you're doing your homework, getting all the background information, making sure you can answer questions. The second step is to identify your allies. If you take this on by yourself, it's going to be a lot harder and it's going to go a lot slower. If you can find allies, find people who can help you, find people who have information, who have contacts, you're going to have more success. You want to identify what you want. You could ask for curriculum. What grades do you want? What levels, etc. You can ask for a community conversation or a town hall. You can ask for the PTAs to have to sponsor speakers. What are you looking for? And then you want to request and respond. Contact the decision makers, request what you want, and then follow up if you don't hear from them. One of the things I do want to point out here is that this approach is not meant to be rigid. It is meant to be kind of a toolbox for you. So feel free to take the things that work for you. And if something doesn't work for you, you could take a different approach. I think that different people have different styles, different school districts, if they're larger, smaller, et cetera, have different needs. So kind of think of this as a toolbox, think of this as suggestions, and make it fit your needs. Don't feel like you have to be rigid with it. Also, all of the steps here, they're not necessarily always going to be linear. You definitely want to start off with doing your homework and planning. But once you talk to your allies and you learn about what's going on in the school district or in in law enforcement, what's going on locally, you may have to go back and do more homework. You may have to go back multiple times. Once you make a request, if the school district denies your request, you may have to go back to step one and do more homework. Maybe find more allies and then request again. So recognize this as, like I said, it's a toolbox. It's something for you to use, but it's not necessarily something that can't be changed. Okay, step one is the planning. This is your homework section. The more time you spend on this section, the easier the rest of the steps are going to be. If you personally have been affected by the opioid epidemic, think about your story and how it has affected you and whether or not you're willing to share. If you are willing to share your story, recognize that you get to choose how much of it you share. You don't need to share everything. Or if it is comfortable and you feel like it would be helpful, share as much as you'd like. I think that having a personal story to go with a request increases the chance that they're going to listen. It makes it more real. It makes them recognize that this is an issue in their community. So there's definitely benefits to sharing a personal story, but sharing a personal story can be scary. It is, if you've lost somebody to fentanyl, it is hard to share, and people recognize that. So just make sure that you are sharing as much as you're comfortable with, and don't feel pressured to share more than you're comfortable with. Educate yourself on the issue of the opioid crisis, fentanyl. Make sure you know what's going on. As I said, you are going to need to educate other people because the average American doesn't really have a good understanding of what's going on. You can use Song for Charlie for resources. There's lots of websites. I'm sure you all know the Pharmacist, or even Googling fentanyl in the name of your city will help you to find recent news stories. So find out what's going on in your community, do research of what's going on nationally, look at CDC numbers, anything that you can do to educate yourself. As I mentioned, getting local news stories is important. You want to see if you can find local news stories within the last 3 to 6 months, if you can, within a year. If you're Googling your town and fentanyl and you're not seeing any news stories, maybe you're maybe you're in a good community and maybe you're lucky. There's a good chance that if you Google a neighboring town or a neighboring state, you will find stories. So don't feel like you have to just look at your town, but try to find some stories that are recent. By finding some stories about local families that have been affected or local people that have been lost, it makes the issue more real. Data and statistics are going to be important as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the coming pages, but you want to find recent data, local data as much as you can, and make sure it's from reputable sources. And then make sure you have an understanding of what your school district is already doing on the curriculum and the drug awareness programs at the school. Do they talk about prescription pills and the dangers of taking prescription pills? Do they talk about illicit drugs? Do they talk about, or do they have assemblies that their kids go to? What grades does the drug education start at? If you have a good understanding of the existing curriculum, then you can be more specific about what your ask is. And also, just if you're coming in more educated with an understanding of what's going on in the district, they're going to be more likely to talk to you. Okay, so we're halfway through our presentation, folks. So thank you for bearing with me, and we're going to continue. I'm going to give you a little bit of information on the data next. So let's keep going here. So I just want to give you some quick data summary. So if you are reaching out to your school districts, you can pull from this information. There's going to be some information that we'll post in the Song for Charlie website, but this is data that you can actually use if you'd like. So per the CDC, the predicted number of overdose deaths in 2020 is up 29% to about 93,000 people who have lost their lives to drug overdoses in 2020. That number is mostly driven by deaths by synthetic opioids, which is primarily fentanyl deaths. And so about 61%, I believe, percent of the overall drug deaths are contributed to fentanyl, which is about 57,000 people in the US. 36 out of the 40 states that are currently reporting provisional data for 2020 show double-digit growth of fentanyl deaths in 2020. So double-digit growth in 36 states. 27 states have growth of over 50%. 10 states have growth of over 100% in 1 year. So the growth numbers are outstanding, just scary. Fentanyl is here and it's just going to get worse. To keep things in perspective, fentanyl deaths are only 2% of all deaths in the US. You know, that's part of the reason why it's not getting the attention. That's part of the reason why people don't understand it. It's less than 2% of total deaths in the US. There's approximately one fentanyl death every 10 minutes in the US. If you look at the younger age group, if you just look at 15 to 24, which is the age group that the CDC breaks it down to, there were approximately 5,000 fentanyl deaths in 2020. That's the estimated, or about 13 per day. Now, the CDC data, all these numbers up above are national data, and it's on the CDC website. There is CDC data that is at a state level as well, and on the next page I will cover that, and we will post that on the CDC website so you can get some state data as well. Now, in terms of local data, it is hard to get numbers. From state to state, there's different reporting requirements. It takes time for counties to collect death certificate data. It takes time for them to process it. Because of confidentiality issues, if you are looking something at a county level or at a city level, sometimes they simply won't give you the data, because if there's not enough deaths, they don't want to release numbers because it compromises confidentiality. And so it's easier to get numbers at a national level, and even at a state level, it's harder to get local numbers. So whenever you're looking at getting local numbers, you can look at the news stories, you can contact your state health authority, typo there, sorry about that. You can contact your county health department or law enforcement. One thing that John and I have found is that these agencies, they are all well aware of the fentanyl problem. They are seeing the numbers come through. They are also interested in fixing this problem. And so if you come to them, in our experience, we have found that they tend to be very helpful. I can't guarantee that everybody will be, but they will see you as an ally, and often they will work with you, talk you through the numbers. If you ask for specific numbers, they often will work with you to get you. They may not be able to get you numbers that you want, but they will do what they can to get you some sort of numbers. So don't be afraid to reach out to them, because as I said, they are seeing this issue. They're afraid of what's coming, and they want this issue to be addressed as well. Okay, I just want to share a graph that I saw, a chart that I saw that really was kind of eye-opening to me. And this is CDC data that is the mechanism of death trend for the last 20 or so years. And as you can see, the poisonings, which is the red line, this is the number that includes overdose deaths, fentanyl deaths, that type of thing. And the poisoning number is going up. And whenever you think about the fact that the poisoning numbers, it was up by the fentanyl deaths are driving up the overall overdose deaths by 31% or so last year. This number is going to continue to go up. So we are projecting that in 2020 or 2021, if it doesn't happen in 2020, the poisoning death rate, the poisoning deaths will surpass the motor vehicle deaths as the second most common cause of death for young people ages 15 to 24. So that is eye-opening. When you think about all of the advancements or all of the programs that have been put in place to promote safety, driving safety, there's all sorts of technology in cars. There's laws against texting and driving, etc. We've made advancements in motor vehicle safety, and that death rate has gone up. But the death rate of poisoning is going to make up for any advances we made there. Firearms still continue to be a problem. Not sure if and when poisonings will surpass that. But if the trend continues upward, there's a good chance that we may surpass that as well. Another kind of thing to consider when talking to schools is that schools have active shooter drills all the time. Across the country, it's a common thing now. So they're addressing the firearm issue. They also have fire drills. I know in Oregon, they have them once a month in all the schools. The death rate from the deaths from fire is all the way down here. So, I think it is reasonable to ask the schools to do some sort of training or education around poisoning. Okay. So, CDC data is also available on the Song for Charlie website. So the drug death data can be hard to find. We are putting some data on the Song for Charlie website. I don't know if it will be, it's not going to be up today, but give us a couple days. By the end of the week, you will be able to find all this data on the Song for Charlie websites. A couple things I wanted to point out is that the states with the highest growth rates in fentanyl deaths fentanyl deaths are Colorado, Oregon, Texas, California, and Nevada. So if you are from those states and you want to convince your schools, there's a great piece of information right there. Your states are unfortunately leading the way when it comes to fentanyl death rates. Okay, step 2, identify your allies. Find out people who can help you in this mission and who will advocate on your behalf. There's strength in numbers. If you're in a large school district, school board members and superintendents are really the decision makers when it comes to curriculum in a big school district. So if you have a neighbor or a friend, or if you know somebody who has a contact that's a school board member or a superintendent, use that person. They will be able to help you. In larger school districts, the head of curriculum and the communications officers also have a lot of influence. The communication office really has a good understanding of the pulse of the community and what's going on and what the priorities are. So they're really a good advocate for you. In smaller school districts, principals can have a lot of influence and often can make decisions, outright decisions regarding curriculum. So if you're in a smaller district, maybe going to a principal might be enough. Use other parents. There's strength in numbers, as I said. And don't be afraid to contact the local agencies, law enforcement, the health department, et cetera, because they're seeing this problem and they want to help you. Okay, step 3 is to identify what you want. So as I mentioned, the Beaverton School District, this page is really modeled off of what the Beaverton School District did. They implemented some changes in their curriculum to address fake pills, which was great because it got to every student in middle and high school. It may not have as much of an impact as some other methods, but at least you know that everybody's being covered. A community conversation. We had a 90-minute community conversation, as I mentioned, where everybody in the community were invited, and it was a mix of parents and kids, as well as parents and kids from neighboring school districts. So that was a great way to get to people quickly. Community conversation can come together in maybe a couple of weeks if you get people who are committed to doing it. So you may not reach as many people, but it can have an impact by also reaching parents and happening quickly. A social media awareness campaign or some sort of campaign where you're reaching out to students and parents is another quick way of doing it. And you can do it through social media, newsletters, flyers in schools. Reaches different audiences in a different way. So whenever you're thinking about what you want to do, these are 3 ideas. You can take different approaches. You could push for having assemblies where you have guest speakers come in, or you could push for maybe you think there's a need for some sort of support for people fighting addiction in the schools. There's different programs out there and different approaches. I think the things that you need to consider is the impact. How many people are you going to be able to reach through your different programs, and how quickly? What's the speed how long it will take for you to implement the program and to pull something together? And how much effort does it take? A bigger school district is going to have a lot more resources and be able to do something, where smaller school districts just don't have as many, simply aren't going to have as much resources. So you need to kind of consider all of these things whenever you're trying to decide what you want to ask for. I do also think it's important to be flexible with your requests and listen to your allies and the people that you are talking to in the school district. And they often are going to have a good understanding of what this school district has done in the past, what they're willing to do, what they have the resources to do, et cetera. So in your mind, you may think that you really want a community conversation or you really want the curriculum to be changed, but maybe your school district for various reasons they're not able to do that, and they want to do a different type of awareness campaign. So just be flexible, recognize that unless you are, personally working in the school district, you may not have the information about what is best or what's going to work best in your school district. Okay, we're to step 4. We're getting close to the end, folks. So step 4 is basically request and respond. So write it down. I recommend that you write down exactly, show some research, show how fentanyl has affected you, and what you're asking for. A well-written letter can be passed on, forwarded on, will get more attention than just having a conversation with somebody. Include your allies. See if your allies are willing to sign a letter with you. Ask if they're able to, if they have contacts in the school district, if they're able to follow up and help to get a response from you. If you're willing to help, share that with the school district. Are you willing to share your family story? Are you willing to work with law enforcement to try to get involved, or the health department? Think about what you can offer them, and if there's anything you can offer them, let them know. Keep at it. Make sure you ask for a response by a certain deadline and follow up. If you don't get the response you want, go back to them 3 months later, 6 months later, or a couple weeks later, whatever is appropriate. Don't be afraid to go back to them. If you do get a response, even if it's not exactly what you want, make sure you thank them. Make sure that you appreciate what they've done. Even if you haven't gotten everything, thank you does a lot to establish goodwill and could help you get something in the future, perhaps. And then be a multiplier. Like I said, if we can share if we share with other school districts what's going on, if we know that somebody has a success and we can share it with our school district, then maybe that will help to convince another district. So share and make sure everybody else is aware of what you're doing as much as possible, whether or not you had success or whether or not you just reached out to a district and they said no. Either way is good to know. Just want to cover a couple points to include in your letter. Again, your story, any way you can make it personal is going to have a bigger impact. Providing data from a reputable source, from local health department, CDC, real data is going to help to support your request. Describe what you're asking for in an open-ended way. Make sure that you're not set on a specific program, but be open-ended to what they're willing to do, and then ask for a response. Your letter, you want to try to balance emotions and facts. You don't want it to be too strong one way or another. Try not to be political. The schools don't want to get involved in the politics. They don't want to hear who's to blame. They just want to be able to educate people on the problem. Personally, I feel that you're going to get more sympathy with the term, if you avoid the term overdose. I think that unfortunately our country isn't sympathetic to the people who are fighting addiction, and that's unfortunate. And so I think the fact that there is a new category of victim, which is the unsuspecting user who thinks they're getting a legitimate pill, and instead is getting a fake pill, I think that people are more willing to listen to that. And so I think we should take advantage of that if you want. And then also I stay away from the term laced, because I think that inaccurately represents what's going on. I think the fact that there is a pill that is 100% fentanyl is a lot more appalling to people than to think that that there's a pill that is, Oxy or Xanax or whatever that has little fentanyl. People feel that they're being duped, or it just makes the people seem more evil or whatever. So I just think you get a better response. And then lastly, there's a sample letter on the Song for Charlie website. So if you're writing a letter and you want to see a sample letter, there's a sample letter for you to see. And just 2 more pages here, tips for success. Be thoughtful with your request. As I said, the more homework you do ahead of time, it's going to pay off in the long run. Change your strategy if needed. Make sure you're being flexible. People in the school district may not respond exactly the way that you expect. If they have different ideas, go with it. Any sort of education is better than no education. Ensure that you're making clear to your school district that there's plug and play resources available. Beaverton School District is freely sharing all of the curriculum data, all the curriculum that they develop. So this was curriculum developed by teachers for teachers, and any school district can use it as is, or they can modify as they see fit. So make sure it's clear that this curriculum is available. Beaverton is also sharing all of their fake and fatal campaign material, and that's including the community conversation and the education, the awareness campaign, and it's all available on their website, and there's links to it from Song for Charlie as well. So if your school district wants to do a fake and fatal campaign, they do not have to create all the graphics, etc. They can take the graphics and use it as is. And be persistent. Just like a kid saying, "Mom, can I have a cookie? Mom, can I have a cookie? Mom, can I have a cookie?" Eventually you give in. If the school districts keep on hearing this, they're hearing, eventually you're going to get the results that you want. Just finishing up, Song for Charlie, we're here to help. I recommend that you go to Song for Charlie, sign up for the newsletter, and as there's updates, as they add material to their website, you'll get those notifications. Use it, check out the website. There's a lot of good information there, and we're continuing to develop more videos, more information, and we'll be posting it there. Feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, I'm no expert in all these areas, but I am getting exposed to a lot. I'm hearing a lot of what's going on. My husband's a bit of a data guru. I can do what I can to help. Feel free to reach out. If I can't help you, I'll try to point you in the right direction. We really would appreciate if you report your progress to Song for Charlie, so we know what's going on, and so we can advertise when there's successes, and we can learn from each other. The fentanyl and opioid epidemic will not go away on its own, unfortunately. And I know this going to schools is not a small task, but I do believe that the more we ask, the more successes we're going to have. And I want people to recognize that even if you go to your school district and you don't get the answer you want, even if they say no, we're still taking steps in the right direction. Every time we ask, even if it's a no, we're a step closer to getting a yes. We're a step closer to convincing them of what's going on. If you take the time to educate them, and even if they say no, they can't do anything now, in 6 months from now, 3 months from now, whenever the next person comes along, whether it's you or somebody else, you have already planted the seed. You have already educated them on what's going on. They are going to be more likely to say yes, even if they say no now. So what you're doing is very important, and it's going to save lives in the long run. So I can't thank you enough for that. I really appreciate each and one of you, every one of you, for being here and for listening and showing interest and taking on this challenge. So thank you. That did take longer than I expected, but we do have some time for Q&As, I think, and I'm willing to stay on for a bit longer. And my husband is here and has summarized some of the Q&As or some of the questions. So I'm going to let him kind of summarize what he's seeing.
Okay, well, hi everybody. Thanks for coming. This is John Epstein. I'm sitting just here beside Jennifer, but I'm wearing my work from home clothes and my baseball cap, so I'm just going to stay off the camera. But I just also want to echo what Jennifer said, how much we appreciate your coming tonight and appreciate your work on this because nothing's going to change unless people do something. So we're doing the best we can to make a dent in the universe here. From reading the chats and the comments, it's clear that some of you have been on this journey longer than us and are very well versed in what's going on. Probably could teach us plenty of things. So we respect and honor your knowledge and appreciate what you've shared in the chat. Hopefully all of you have looked at the chat where people have offered and suggested good ideas to each other where you could find out about that. And as you know, in Zoom, you can chat with each other and you could individually share emails or make contacts, because I think we all find value in making connections as we're on this journey. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a couple of questions and pitch them over to Jennifer or try to answer some myself where I can. And then I'm kind of multitasking now. So if new questions arise while we're going through the questions that I do have, I'll try to flip back over to the chat screen and make sure I catch those messages. But the first group of questions was kind of, I'll call them administrative, that about Song for Charlie and about the curriculum. Will I get a recording? Can I get the content that you just presented, Jennifer? And does this program, which I think could either mean Song for Charlie or the curriculum that Beaverton developed, does it address mental health, harm reduction, trauma? So the first of that question was about the recording and the presentation materials.
Okay, so yes, we are recording this and we will post it on the Song for Charlie website, and we will also post the presentation. So if there's anything you want to pull for the presentation, or if you want to share the recording, you're welcome to. And you're asking if it addresses.
Right, does Song for Charlie or the curriculum address mental health, harm reduction, trauma, deeper issues underneath drug use?
Yes. So the mission of Song for Charlie is really to warn kids about the dangers of fake pills. And so the harm reduction, the mental health side of it, and actually let me go back and to educate them on alternatives to using pills. Song for Charlie is a new nonprofit. It was formed in the last 9 months, 6 months, somewhere in there. And right now, the awareness campaign is the bulk of what they're doing. They do have some alternatives to taking pills type of mental health kind of information. And I know that Ed is working on bulking that up. So we don't necessarily pretend that we are the experts in that area or have the best information on the area, but that is an area that will be growing in Song for Charlie. In terms of the curriculum material, again, it is mostly fake pill related and raising that issue. So the curriculum was developed to go in conjunction with what Beaverton School District already had, and they already did have information on mental health. I don't think that they have, in terms of harm reduction, do you know?
Yeah, I think we're out of our expertise area here.
Yeah.
Song for Charlie hopes to get to a greater level of like coping skills and these sorts of things. But there's another question in here about what do you think about drug counselors in the schools? Would that help? We do that in New Jersey. That's had a lot of benefits. To me, that makes perfect sense, and I think that harm reduction programs and teaching about fake pills and the dangers would be best served to students as part of a holistic curriculum that deals with student mental health and all of the issues surrounding it. And as Jennifer said, the sharp point of our spear right now is fake pills. And then we hope to, from Song for Charlie, we hope to expand into coping skills. But there's probably a lot of folks out there more educated than us knowing about what is the way to reach kids overall on some of the holistic challenges that might be leading to wanting to take a pill in the first place.
Yes. And so we agree that all of that is important. And I do know New Jersey has some great programs, and some states have better programs than other states. And I think that those are all important. And the focus for Song for Charlie in this particular effort is fake pills. Now, that's not to say that if you're approaching your school district, like I said, this is a framework, this is a tool for you. If you want to ask for something different, that is going to be up to you. Do what you think is best for your school district and for you.
Okay, the next set of questions kind of deals with the approach of reaching schools or getting data or making strides. Some are successes, some are challenges. The first one is kind of describing that it's difficult to get even a call back or an email back from the school, from the principal, from various education departments. It's frustrating. The question is, well, what can you do if you're getting no response? What are some approaches?
Yeah, if you're getting no response, I would say knock on different doors, find allies elsewhere. If the principal's not responding and you have a teacher that you have a good relationship, talk to the teacher, go to the parent-teacher organization. The parent-teacher organizations have a lot of influence, and find out if there's anybody there that you can talk to. Find out if there's people in the health in the health department or in the school health area, the health teacher, or I'm sure they'd be interested in hearing. So, going straight to the decision maker isn't always going to get you the answer. Going straight to the highest level person you're not always going to get the response. So if you have to go through a back door, if you perhaps even go to, if your school has some school safety resource officers through the police department, go to the police department and see if they have contacts. There's a lot of different ways. Ask neighbors if they have contacts, ask friends. You just need to keep on beating on doors.
Yep. And I would add also that while I think starting with these decision makers is sometimes not your best route, sometimes depending on how your school district's organized, you have a political, someone who's been voted into office, a school board member, or maybe your school administrator who, you are their constituent. And generally they should be receptive to receiving, input, comments, questions, and should be a built-in ally. Now, how you approach them and what you're asking for can make a big difference as to what kind of response you get. But if you go looking for an ally and you look for someone who is up for office, sometimes that's a way to go.
And another comment is your approach. What I found when I did have some success reaching out to the Oregon State Department of Education, and instead of telling them that I wanted to meet to them to ask them to implement a program, I told them it was an informational. I wanted to learn about what their curriculum was, or what their state standards were. I wanted to know what they were doing about this. I wanted to know, basically it was more to ask questions. And so sometimes if you're approaching them and telling them what to do, they're going to be resistant. But if you approach them and just say, I'm trying to learn, I'm trying to understand what's going on, you might get the response. You might be able to get in to talk to someone.
And while we were talking, someone said they had good luck with their city council members. So
City council, that's another approach.
That's a good input.
Great.
Or the mayor's office, depending on how your city is structured. The next one is, it's not really a question, just an idea about something that's been done in Kentucky with a program called Truth and Consequences. And that participant put a link to that work in the chat. And so that's, I think, a good example of where a parent or a participant has engaged with the school and offered their help and is working with the school district to provide some education in the schools. So you can find that link in the chat, and thank you for the person who submitted that. The third comment in this area is somebody who said they've contacted their local EMS, so whoever coordinates the ambulance service, who do gather data, and they are giving that person updates on overdose calls and deaths every week.
Wow, great.
Yeah, and I know in Oregon, we've only just started publishing data collected from EMS services about overdose calls or poisoning calls. And so if somebody has taken that on themselves and is calling EMS to get the data that is public data, like that is really great and a piece of information that could really make a big impact. Plus it can be very real time, and you could actually get a hold of information that could literally save a life next week if you're seeing there's some bad batch of pills in your community last week. So that's really great to hear. Thank you to the person who shared that. The next group of questions, they're not really questions. There's just 5 or 6 comments about Narcan. The value in that, the value in having that, the risks in Narcan maybe not being adequate for fentanyl. Jennifer, do you have anything to say about Narcan as an approach, or how that fits in with this, or even just educate some people in case they may not know?
Yeah, so I'm guessing you all know what Narcan is, but it's it either can be an inhaler or a shot that is used to bring people back from an overdose. And honestly, that is an area where I think Narcan is important. I don't really know the best approach with Narcan and how that fits into the education part of it. So I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that. I don't know if you do, John.
No, just that I think we should probably not think about Narcan as a silver bullet. Something to have as a last resort. I think it's done wonders in some cases. It's inadequate in other cases with the power of fentanyl. And, I think there's something worthy to pursue there, but also we shouldn't see it as solving the problem. And beyond that, I don't have as much knowledge probably as a lot of people do. So, yeah. The next set of comments was around data. I'm just gonna kind of go through them. One person asked, what's the ratio of pills coming from friends versus through the internet or the mail? Do you want me to answer that? Well, I wish I knew. The sad fact is that there is no good data on fentanyls or fake pills. Having good data would require a standard and completely different process for law enforcement when they get to the scene of what they suspect might be a fake pill death. And basically you have a different situation in every county, jurisdiction, city, state, where sometimes it's instantly deemed an quote overdose and no evidence is gathered and no case is opened. And in other places, there may be more procedures to go and investigate it as a crime scene. And this then gets to, well, is this a crime? And what is the whole, the whole conversation about drug-induced homicide? Very important topic. And I'm not at all an expert. I'm not gonna go into that. I would just say that the data around fake pills is lacking because of the same related topics of how this is treated. And so there is, the best you're gonna get today might be that sort of EMS level data of drug poisonings happening in our community. Perhaps with the law enforcement, where you could get someone from law enforcement to say, yes, we are seeing teens dying of pills that were counterfeit, but I do not know of any standard place to get to good fake pill data. And that is something Song for Charlie is looking at, but I don't think we're going to get there quickly. And so you're going to have to use the best, best on the ground measures you can to find that out. I think in this case, journalists and investigative reporters can really be an ally. If you have an opportunity to engage a journalist to try to get down to the root of this problem, I think they sometimes can get information out of law enforcement that talks about last month we had 10 kids poisoned by counterfeit pills that, from a off the record source or something that you're not gonna really be able to find in the public domain. So it's a really good question. I wish I had a better answer.
The Zoom call ends at 6:30. I don't know if we'll be kicked off.
I don't think it will, but just
Okay.
in case, say what you want to say if we
Okay.
do get kicked off.
Yeah, just the Zoom call was supposed to end at 6:30, and so I don't know if we'll get kicked off, but we'll continue answering questions. But in case we get kicked off, I just want to thank you all for coming. Like I said, check the Song for Charlie website if you're interested in seeing this video or forwarding it on to anybody. And feel free to contact me if you have any questions, and we'll do what we can to help. So
I'll keep going. Two more data questions or comments. One is just the same thing. Somebody said CDC, they directly contacted the CDC and this person was told they have no data on the method of consumption. So was that from a pill, and was that pill counterfeit pill, or was it from this or that? And that lines up with what I'm seeing. And you are right. In other words, they don't know how many people are dying from fake pills. And that's what I understand as well. So that is unfortunate. And I mean, someone else said they spoke to their coroner, and in this particular case, they're not tracking fentanyl deaths at all. So let alone whether it's a fake pill, they're not even tracking that fentanyl caused it. And this is a challenge. I noticed in pulling together the data that's going to be on the Song for Charlie website and that Jennifer shared. There's something like 15 states that are not tracking the specific category or cause of death that is fentanyl. It requires a special test, and those states are not doing that or not reporting that, or maybe only a city is in that state, but not all of the counties, and so they don't report it. So where this is dangerous is that as fentanyl analogs happen, like carfentanil and other new synthetic drugs, that just means there's going to be more and more poison cause of deaths that are not attributed to a particular drug. And so this is a problem. And so if you have space in your advocacy work beyond talking to schools, I think talking to your health department and your legislators and some of the same groups of people to talk about how deaths are being recorded and where some might be being missed, and using state data from other states to show how that's being done, I think could make a big impact in your state. And so as Jennifer said, like as you peel this onion, it's not a simple or small problem. There are many, many, many angles to it. And so take on what you can, find allies, and recognize also that, we're here talking about education. There are lots of other problems and areas to make an impact, and everybody is doing the best they can and trying to make a difference. And we appreciate where you are and hope that, you know, your problem, you're able to make some difference where you are. That is pretty much it. Let me go back to the questions and see if there is anything else. You know, they don't seem to be questions, but there's some comments there. So rather than me reread the comments, I encourage people to read the chat. I think that the chat comments go with the recording, but I'm not entirely sure. So please, we'll just leave we'll turn off our audio and our video, and we'll leave the meeting open for people to have time to read through the chats. Jennifer, if you want, we're down to, it's still over 20 people. That might be a difficult number to unmute and to try to have a verbal conversation.
Yeah, I'm okay with it though. If anybody wants to unmute, if anybody has any questions or comments, or feel free. I think we're wrapping up what we had to share. And like I said, we're, you know, you know, I think sharing is best, and I want to learn from you too, if anybody has anything to share.
What I'm doing is, I don't know if I'm doing this right. I'm asking everybody to unmute, and then if they choose to, they will. And if the open question period works this way, great. And if not, we'll quickly find out.
I have a question.
Yes.
Number one, I'm so very sorry for your loss. I lost my son in March of this year, and December was pretty. Not a lot of time has passed since the death of your child. How quickly did you start this process with the school district, and for them to have already created this curriculum? Just kind of a timeline. How did that happen?
So we reached out to our school district right before spring break. So for us, that was the end of March. And as I said, that they had some deaths in the district besides Cal. And in fact, Cal was no longer in the district technically. But they were aware of the problem, and they hadn't started the curriculum. They hadn't really, they conceptually, they kind of knew that they needed to do something, but us sitting down with them and talking through the approach really got them moving. And so we approached them at the end of March, and by the end of April, the last day of April, I believe, or April 29th, we had the community conversation. So it took about a month to pull together the community conversation. And the curriculum came within a couple weeks after that. As soon as I reached out to them, literally within a week or two, we were talking to the teachers that were developing curriculum. And you know, they were, I don't know if they did it full time, but they were on it quickly. And I would say within the first 6 weeks of us reaching out to them, they so I know that is very unusual. And like I said, Beaverton, they recognized that there was an issue before we approached them. So that was part of the reason why they were able to respond. In Beaverton School District, I think they have 44,000 students or so. It is a large school district. So they do have a lot of resources that they were able to put on it.
Jennifer, before you take the next question, I just wanted to mention, somebody also mentioned that it doesn't have to be just parents approaching the school district. And, you know, that's true. I'm sure that you or I have said through all of this conversation, we're coming at it from the point of view of parents. That's who we are, but you're absolutely right. There's no reason it has to be only parents. And so thank you for that comment, and agree, you know, we all can make a difference, whatever our role is.
Rely on strangers? Strangers? Look, they're our neighbors. And anyway,
Anybody else?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Janet from Santa Barbara, California, and I just want to say thank you for putting this together. I founded an organization called Safe Launch. We are working to prevent substance abuse in youth, and I would like to just stay connected. I'm actually listening in from my car, so I can't download any chats. I'm wondering if there will be any of this conversation available, by a link or anything like that we can follow up on, or how we might connect.
Are you, well, the video will be available online. Are you, when you say any of this conversation, you're talking about the chat?
Okay, good. No, I
Okay.
didn't hear that the video was going to be available, so thank you. Okay.
Yes, so we'll be posting the video as well as the presentation itself. So you can see the PowerPoint presentation itself. And yes, you're welcome to use it and would love to continue talking to you. Thank you, Janet.
Okay, thanks.
I had another follow-up to your answer as far as the timeline. So being that it happened just recently, have they presented the curriculum to kids yet, or is that going to happen in the fall?
Yes, they did present the curriculum to the kids that were already in health class. They got it. So actually the lower grades, most of the kids got the full curriculum. The kids who didn't have the health curriculum in the spring semester, they got an abbreviated version.
Come on, Mama.
So everybody, all the middle school and high school students, which we estimate is over 22,000 students, got some sort of fake pill education this spring. Like I said, it was very focused on fake pills, and it is, and the issue with fentanyl, the introduction of fentanyl, and how that has been introduced to the drug supply. So yes, it was implemented this spring. Okay. Anybody else? So I think we're going to wrap up. Thank you again to everybody for being here. Feel free to reach out to me if you come up with any questions later down the line. I will do my best to, make sure we're continuing to update the Song for Charlie website with any data we have or any resources that we have. And I would love to hear from you. If you do reach out to your school districts, whether or not you had success or not, I would love to hear, just so we can kind of have an idea of any progress that we're making. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.